I'm really thrilled to have everyone here today. Per usual, please mute yourselves here as I chat through the presentation. I'll be sharing the slide deck out. I'll be recording the presentation, so no pressure to get it all here on the first go. You can always look back at either the material or the recording after the fact. For those of you who don't know, just giving a quick update on me, I've done a couple of these presentations over the last couple of weeks. I did one on how I've gone from FANG to FI. I did one on creative financing a couple of weeks ago. I'm doing this one here on virtual assistants. And then I'm going to be doing one on long distance investing. Hey, if you're not able to, oh, there you go. Yeah, thank you for muting yourself. Oh, maybe not. Maybe one of the co-hosts can mute whoever that is. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, that's what I've done here. My name's Nick. I'm 31 years old. Went to USC. Married the love of my life. Outkicked my coverage. As you can see, she's way more attractive, and you can't tell by the photos. Way smarter than me, and that was the best financial trick of my career. And so, yeah, we're financially free. And what I'm here to talk to you about is how to hire a virtual assistant to do more and pay less. I'm going to talk specifically about how to do this in real estate, but I'll be honest, it extends long beyond just the real estate game and can benefit people all over the place. So we're going to talk a little bit about it. We're about 20-25 minutes. I'll chat with you guys about all of this. I'll then open it up for questions. So please hold them until then or put them in the chat and we'll go from there. But here is the presentation on how to hire a virtual assistant to do more for less. So before we can go any further, we need to define what a virtual assistant is. Fundamentally, it's someone who is not co-located with you, who helps you with tasks. I'm going to talk through these three different models. I've used all three. I have a strong preference. It's going to be the last one, but I think all of them have their merit. Task-based virtual assistants is something like a TaskRabbit. There are a variety of different services you can use where you send them a single task. They do it. They charge you for it. It's a really good model. It's low friction to start. It's budget conscious, but the cons are you have to explain everything every single time. There's no SOP there. There's little accountability with each individual project as you're just sending a task and letting that happen. And then it's more expensive on a per task basis than any of the other options that we're talking about. A team-based virtual assistant model is a little bit different. I used a service called OK Relax in the past. They did a pretty good job for me. There are huge pros. There's redundancy in the system. If one person gets sick, if one person quits, you're fine. Your tasks can still get done. It scales with your needs. Generally speaking, they'll have programs anywhere from, 10 hours per month, all the way up to full-time or beyond even full-time and have multiple people working with you. The cons are that it's still more expensive than having your own employee on a per task basis. And you really can't build a relationship with these people. You're regularly going to be retraining because you don't have your one or two people that are your go-tos for each individual task. The final one is to actually hire an employee. That's really what I'm going to dig down into a bit today. I highly recommend it. This is a dedicated resource and is somebody that is really only working for you, or if you're splitting time with somebody else, working with them as well. The pros are they're dedicated. They're very cheap on a per task basis. You can build a relationship and a standard operating procedure with everything and continue to train that individual. And the cons are that you have to fill more hours, generally speaking. So if you don't have enough work to fill all those hours, they might be idle. And that there's no redundancy. If that person's sick, you really can feel it. I've also used people from all of these locations. I've used virtual assistants in the US, the Philippines, Vietnam, India, and more. Currently, all of my virtual assistants are in the Philippines. Absolutely love them. And that's what I personally recommend at the moment. So why do you hire a VA? Pretty simple. You just don't have enough hours in the day to get everything that you want to get done. There's more on your to-do list than you can tackle. And you are the roadblock in your business. There's more business than you can take on just due to the number of hours in the day. I really like to establish what feels, and this sounds super woo-woo, but what feels heavy to you and that you don't need to actually be physically present for. I actually reached out to a couple of my friends who I've helped hire virtual assistants over the last year or so. And a couple of them, one in particular really stood out to me. And I'll just read it off. Lindsay here. He said, I hired a VA to assist in day-to-day operations with my Airbnb property management company. Having a VA has been life-changing. I was able to expand to 3 virtual assistants and now have 105 hours of messaging completely covered, as well as invoicing. One of the VAs has become our primary administrative assistant and also handles new VA training. I'm able to take all of my quick, simple tasks and simply leave a voice memo to a VA and have the work done for me, freeing me to focus on items that help grow my business. I can tell you, I feel that myself. That is something that I regularly just need somebody to handle the little stuff. And we're going to talk through what some of those things. What can a VA do? We just talked about what Lindsay does with his virtual assistant. It really depends on how creative you are and how good you are at outsourcing. For me, I've listed off a variety of things that I think are really common use cases. Calendaring. One of my virtual assistants makes sure that I'm not overloaded on any one day or any one week, and actually reschedules my calendar if she sees that begins to happen, because she knows that if I'm too booked, I'm not going to perform at the level that I hope to. Email management. I've shared my inboxes, at least my personal inboxes, with my virtual assistants so that they can actually handle the little tasks and conversations that don't require my attention. They go in and look at the deals that hit my inbox. They go in there and handle small customer service questions. They pay bills on my behalf. All through my email management, really helpful. Social media management. I'm going to say that here, and I'm probably going to get, just absolutely destroyed by everybody here. But I don't really make any of the posts on my Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. I don't really want to spend the time there. And so I actually have my virtual assistants do that on my behalf. Audio and video editing. It's not something I currently do a lot of, but I actually have had my virtual assistants go in there and do a little bit of that for me. If you're not on mute, would you mind just muting yourself? Note taking. I actually have my virtual assistants. You're going to see here on here, we've got a person on the chat called otter.ai that's transcribing the notes. What my virtual assistant does is she actually goes in there and makes sure that all my notes are transferred to my CRM so that I can always remember what I've talked to everybody about. Bill paying, I talked a little bit about that. I never go online and actually pay bills anymore. I hand that off to them. Accounting. My business has a lot of accounting that's required, and they actually go out and do that on my behalf. Invoicing. The other day, I needed to invoice, actually, Lindsay, who I just talked about earlier, they went through and did that on my behalf. Research. I think we can all admit that the first 80% of everything is just filtering. I have them go and do the initial filtering down, allowing me to just be a decision maker. Booking travel. They know my travel preferences. I'm always in the aisle seat. They know what airlines I prefer, and they know up to X dollars on any flight. They can just book it on my behalf. One of my virtual assistants manages the others. She actually gives tasks to my other virtual assistants. It's pretty darn cool. And then she makes sure that everyone is moving towards the same goals. And if things are getting missed, she holds them accountable. Data processing. I know a lot of you guys are a whole lot smarter than me. You could probably script a lot of the things that I end up sending their way. But if it's something quick and easy and just able to dissect some data on my behalf, they're more than capable. Sending gifts. Please don't tell my mom. Please don't tell my sister. But I am reminded before their birthdays that the birthdays are coming up. And my virtual assistants are the ones that actually go out and do my gift giving. And they actually help me to recruit other virtual assistants are able to join the team. So pretty darn cool all around. Oh, there we go. All right. So what are the downsides of a virtual assistant? I've got you all hyped up now, but there are definite downsides. They aren't physically present. They can't go get your laundry. They can't grab your groceries. There are definite disadvantages there. They can have connection issues depending on the location. I'll tell you, my virtual assistants oftentimes have issues where they can't connect for a day or more just due to weather issues. And then additionally, they could have communication gaps. They might not be as good a written writer or verbal communicator as you might like. And finally, they won't natively know your business. So you're going to have to train them up, but that's going to be any employee that you bring on. So after all that, if you still want to hire a virtual assistant, it's actually not that hard. What you need to do from that point is you need to identify what you need to have done, determine the actual skill sets that are required, evaluate the time needed, and then post the job and hire. Very similarly to any hiring you might do. Qualities that you should definitely consider that I consider are essentially skill sets of the job. What's funny is if you actually look at the resumes of any of my assistants, they are as educated, if not more so, than me in all of those cases. I really like to screen additionally for written English, spoken English. I think those are super important. Hours of availability. Keep in mind that the Philippines are 12 hours ahead of us. So are they willing to work the hours that you need? What hours do you actually need them? Do you need them to work when you're working, or is it the kind of thing where they can work overnight and have things delivered to your inbox in the morning? I wake up to dozens of messages from my virtual assistants that essentially have just been work completed that I get to then review during the day at my leisure and then send back to them and have them continue those processes. And then finally, what does their tech look like? This is not just what computers do they use, it's what technology they understand, what programs do they use on a regular basis, and then also what does their internet situation look like? So for my assistants in the Philippines, I require that they have a backup data plan because so often the data goes out. So you just need to have that understanding. And then finally, it's not on here, but have they ever done work from home before? A lot of these people have, and that's fantastic. For those who haven't, just making sure that they have a good understanding of what that's going to entail is key. What's really important from is determining your level of outsourcing for any specific task. You need to understand what can be done in each one. So let's talk about level 1. Start a task and check in. This is where you let them know what you need to have done, maybe show them how to do it, and then have them work for a set number of hours, and then check back in with you. If you're happy with the results, fantastic. If not, then you give them feedback and redirect them. Level 2 is where you ask them to go out, do this task that you've given them instruction on, and then check in if there are any issues throughout the way. In a lot of cases, what you do is you set a time parameter. Don't spend more than this amount of time. At the end, you give them feedback. Level 3 is where you tell them, hey, go finish this task and come back to me. This is when you have some level of belief that they understand what they're looking for. And then finally, level 4 is very rare. It's for someone that you really trust. It's on a task that you know that they have mastery, where you just say, hey, go get this done. And if you have a problem, come back and get me. So I can tell you why I actually put this slide in here. I have hired some virtual assistants that I gave some ambiguous tasks to, and I didn't do a good job of defining exactly what needed to be done. And I apologize. My dog's here wrestling next to me, if you can hear that. So I gave some tasks that were pretty ambiguous. And they spent 40 or 50 hours without coming back and chatting with me before I realized that they were spinning their wheels and going down the wrong path. So I definitely would recommend making sure that you set time parameters, especially early on when you're working with new virtual assistants. So how to prepare? I hired my first full-time virtual assistant just about a year ago. And I sat down and I created processes for everything that I wanted to get done. I got super nitty gritty with each individual step. I went down what emails needed to be sent, what databases needed to be updated, what documents needed to be retrieved, and put it all through what my purchase and rehab process was. At that point, I then put the things that only I could do in that process. I was the only one who could sell. I was the only one who could sign documents. I was the only one who could control the money. But the rest of it, I could hand off to somebody else. So then what I did is I went and I recorded myself doing all the different tasks. I explained why each of them was important so that I could hand it off to my virtual assistant. I had all of this treasure trove of information available to them when they started. I recommend that you explain the who needs to be contacted, who needs to do it, what needs to be accomplished, when it needs to be accomplished in relative terms to other items on SOP, where it needs to be placed, where the documents need to be, how it needs to be done, and then why is super important, especially if you're bringing somebody into your business. It's not enough to tell them to do something. They need to understand why they're doing it so that they can help you processize and improve things over time. And I'll tell you, that has been the key to us continuing to grow. So how best to work with a virtual assistant? Think of it as an employee, because that's exactly what it is. This is a person that's relying on you for work. Create systems of communication. Zoom, Slack, and Notion are key methods of communication on a daily basis. I do daily sync ups. I highly recommend it. It's going to feel like that's a lot of overhead, a lot of work, but I think it's one of the smartest things you can do to get eye to eye with them. Ask how the different tasks are going. See if they understand what they're doing. You can see it in their eyes versus them just giving you a thumbs up in a Slack. And then just ask them how they're doing. Get to know them as people. Really important. Be available to answer questions. This is Sorry, my dog's digging behind me on his bed. Be available there, because when they're spinning their wheels, they're going to need your help. And so being available, having Slack open is pretty key. And then don't hoard information. The more you let them in, the more that they can help, and the more that they can take off your plate as you continue to grow. How to protect yourself. Because again, you don't know these people. They are 8,000 miles away. I recommend using a tool like a screenshot monitor, at least early on in your relationship with them. Make sure that they're actually at their computer, that they're actually working. Regularly communicate in async and video. This is super important. Get that trust, build that trust. Give limited credit card access. I didn't put that on there, but I do have credit cards that I watch regularly as they make purchases on my behalf. Share your passwords with LastPass. And what's kind of cool about that service is you don't actually have to share the password itself. They can just essentially have LastPass log them in without actually sharing the password. So you can revoke that access whenever you want. Keep an eye on your transactions. We just talked through that. And then pay them through reputable services. I use Wise in order to pay them, and it's been wildly effective. Some common mistakes. Every issue I've had with my virtual assistants over the years has been my fault. I haven't been reachable. I've hoarded information and not told them. I've assumed that I was being clear when I wasn't, and I've given too much leeway in several cases where I needed to essentially treat this person a little bit more like an adult. I need to be reachable. I have at times definitely just disconnected, and that is the worst thing you can do in a situation like that. They can't help you if you're not sharing what needs to be done. Make sure you spend enough time, especially early on. Before my first VA started, I spent 30 to 40 hours preparing, doing the Loom videos I was telling you about, in order to make sure that I had all the information ready for her on day one. And when they started, I spent an hour a day getting them up to speed. Now I spend about 30 minutes a day, but early on, you invest an hour and you get back like maybe 10 minutes worth of benefit. But that starts to shift fairly substantially. Now I spend half an hour with my team every single morning, and I get probably 10 to 15 hours of my time back from investing that time and making sure that they're aligned towards my long-term goals. The more that you share, the more that they can help. And you aren't as vital to many of these tasks, and particularly within the real estate investing game, as you think you are. Give them an opportunity, and I think you'll be surprised. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my team. I've got two badass ladies working for me. I've got one more actually starting on, who's actually going to be trained by these two. I invest even less time because I've spent so much with Lizelle and Menchu. Lizelle was my first full-time virtual assistant that started with me last year. She came to me with a background in property management. She is more educated than I am. She's the right hand in my business. She's my work wife. She's my head VA and chief of staff, more than just any type of executive assistant or anything like that. The people in my network love and fear her. My contractors are terrified of getting a note from her. Title company is asking how they can get their own Lizelle. And deal finders are just, they don't even bother sending it to me. They send it to her because she's the one that actually goes and looks up and checks out properties and decides what we're going to be purchasing. Menchu is absolutely incredible. She runs my social media. I hired her soon thereafter. I hired Lizelle. She does all of our internal admin work. If it was up to me, my tenants would be living in the dark. And so she actually deals with a lot of that stuff. Margie's going to start with us on Monday. Really excited. She has a background in accounting. She's going to essentially create redundancy in the system. To my earlier point about one of the weaknesses of having your own employee is that one of them gets sick, you're screwed. And let me tell you, Lizelle got COVID and I was screwed for a little bit. And we're trying to build a little bit more redundancy in our process here. So what do I have my VAs do for me? In addition to everything I told you about earlier, they are the first pass on hundreds of properties on a weekly basis, and they pass along the leads that fit our criteria. Absolutely vital way that we're able to actually source deals. Through the deal purchasing process, they coordinate everything from inspection to close. They are in charge of it. I just sign the paperwork and cut the check at the end and shake hands and kiss babies with the contractors. They handle everything. Contractor management. They actually work with our contractors to get photo updates to me and our clients. They get timeline updates to make sure that we're staying on track, and they document everything on my behalf. Utility setup. I was just talking about this. The tenants would be in the dark if it was up to me. And thankfully, they are on top of it, and they make sure that we have power and everything set up at all of our units. Expense tracking. They actually manage my entire P&L and tracking expenses for tax purposes. I had very little to do this year just due to all their hard work. Client relations. We work with a lot of different people, and we have a ton of communications that need to go out. they make sure that these partners are happy and pretty darn satisfied. I don't know if Option's here today, but I think he's seen just how incredible they are at that piece. Social media, we talked about this already. I'm a terrible millennial, and they handle all that on my behalf. They actually, believe it or not, pay the team. They pay each other. So I have cut the checks for herself, and then actually the virtual assistants of my contractor, my property manager, and my agent, they manage all that on my behalf, and I just have to approve it. They also handle personal tasks for me. I have a funny aside here. Early on, when Lizelle was new, I didn't quite have enough work for her yet. I didn't have enough time to train her up. So Diane, my wife, sicked her on a customer service situation. And I've never seen Diane as happy as she was that next morning when she saw the back and forth between Lizelle and this customer service agent Lizelle was just offended on our behalf that we were in this situation. And let me tell you, that was made right. So you can sick them on customer service and it really works. They actually help us hire more VAs. They've hired the virtual assistants and done all the initial screening for my contractor, my agent, my property manager, Lindsay, who I was just telling you guys about. All of them have gone through our virtual assistants and done the recruiting. They create all my marketing materials that generate north of 6 digits in income for me on an annual basis. They keep me organized and on task. If ever I'm the holdup, they make sure that they let me know and push me in the right direction. I planned last year to hire a virtual assistant to get my stuff cleaned up. I was planning to do 8 properties last year because I knew I needed to improve my processes. I set up incentives for Lizelle, for Menchu, that aligned with, hey, if we buy houses, if we sell houses, refinance houses. And because of that, they pushed me. They ended up pushing me in a good way. And I ended up buying 28 houses last year. We're on track to buy about 60 this year, between 55 and 60, based on how we're doing. And they let me know when I'm the holdup. So they push me to be better. 1, because I know I need to support them, but then 2, because they enable me to do so much more. So that's all I've got here on how and why to hire virtual assistants. I'll give you guys one last quick piece of information. I haven't said numbers throughout this entire presentation on purpose, because I was hoping you get to this point and assume, hey, sounds like a $25 an hour type person. Lizelle here is my highest paid employee. She makes $6 an hour and $50 per house we purchase, sell, or refinance. Menchu has a similar incentive structure and is at $4 an hour. So for both of these together, I am paying, I don't know, $400 a week, ballpark. And they absolutely run my business so that I'm able to come to Facebook and give my all, and while simultaneously buying 60 properties a year. So I think that's a pretty darn incredible situation. Both of them, with that level of income, are living upper middle class lifestyles in the Philippines and are quite thrilled with their current situation. If you have any questions about any of this, obviously you can reach out to me. I've got a Calendly link here, my own real estate, my email. It's the best way to get in touch with me versus pinging me here internally. Additionally, I'll swing back here to the thanks here in a moment, but I have a coaching class that helps people get started, kicking that off in March here. Once I've got a couple of minutes to string together, to throw it together, and so to help people either get started or scale their real estate investment. So I'm going to stop now and open it up for questions. I'm sure that there are some on hiring virtual assistants. Or I can just sit here quietly. All right, we got one.
Hi, so I'm Jyoti, and a question probably I might have missed if you had already shared earlier is, at what point is it good to bring in a virtual assistant? Is it like once you have 4 properties, or because it just seems like, for let's say for someone who is like breaking in and wants to break in, is it better to have a VA come in early on, or is it like for someone who already has a set, is there a threshold is what I'm getting to?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's not about the number of properties. It's about how much stuff that we talked about earlier, all the different kinds of tasks that you can outsource. How many of those do you have? How many extra hours are you spending on a computer doing things, moving things from here to there, documenting things, analyzing deals, things like that? How many hours are you spending per week? Understanding that number, and then understanding your per hour. I'll tell you, I value my spare time much higher than even my salary. Every spare hour that's not part of my W-2, I value double my hourly rate that Facebook essentially pays me, assuming I was hourly. So with that in mind, I would just do a cost benefit analysis of, hey, I have 10 hours worth of work to do on a weekly basis. I can hire somebody for $160 a week to do it. That essentially is $16 an hour versus Nick is talking about using the 40, but even hiring somebody like that, how would I pay $160 to retrieve 10 hours of my time? That seems like easy calculation for me to do. But it's not about the number of properties, it's about the number of tasks. And this could be a personal virtual assistant as much as it is a business personal assistant. Yeah. Okay, cool. Fantastic. All right, who's next?
I'm
all right,
next.
Yeah.
My name is Joey. I come from Oculus Media. My questions, I think a lot of people are interested in, as well as how did you find Lazy, and like which company or which platform you find them? And the second question for me is, while you're interviewing the VA, what are you looking for in that short period of time?
Yeah, so I used a service that helps define specifically for real estate investors. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but if you message me, I'll send it to you. That's it. If you guys reach out to me, I can help. I use Lazille and her network to help find people for you guys as well. So feel free to reach out. I think that's something that could be hugely valuable for them. It's a huge performance incentive for them, in addition to helping you guys out. I think it was called Sphere Rocket, just off the top of my head. I could be off on that one, but I think that was the service. So what was I looking for? I didn't actually care if they had real estate experience. That wasn't as important to me as somebody who was smart, who could talk about ambiguity. So many of the virtual assistants I had worked with in the past, if something wasn't clearly explained in the process, they weren't able to take the next step. They just froze or would spin their wheels and would like spin out. I wanted somebody who seemed a little bit more like a problem solver. So I was asking questions about, hey, can you tell me about a time where something was not clearly stated and you overcame that problem anyway? Can you tell me about a time where something went wrong and you went above and beyond? Those were the kinds of questions that I thought were super important, because I had such bad luck previously, or just bad experiences previously with them kind of spinning out. Now, granted, I blame myself for that, but I also wanted to find a really great team member that was that. Like I said, having the real estate experience wasn't important. I could teach that to anybody. What I do here is not terribly complicated. It's high labor and high relationship. So I could teach that.
Nice. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Sarkaya. I'm totally ruined that. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. So my question is around, I guess it's a request, but would you be able to share like what exact processes that you have, virtual assistants, to find those like great deals? What do they need to do? And then what are the like filtering outs that they do to find you the one that like you want to chase after?
So my investing criteria are very different than yours, probably. And what I'm looking for is probably pretty darn different. So I'll be honest with you, that is exactly what I'm going to be kind of training people up on, specifically within that scale coaching program I was telling you about, is how to systemize your specific processes. I think that's a super important piece, is understand for you, because you can't just copy my stuff and assume it's going to work in whatever market you're talking. So it's really about systemizing your own specific process and then figuring out where they slot in, and then figuring out exactly what your deal criteria are and what labor costs, essentially how much things are going to cost you in your market, and allowing them to come in there and put together scopes of work on your behalf. That's essentially how I do this effectively, is they know how much everything's going to cost me. They look at the square footage of the house, they look at what needs to be done, and they have a spreadsheet that they use to essentially put together a soft scope of work on my behalf. Yeah, so feel free to reach out. I think it sounds like you know what you're doing within your specific market, but yeah, reach out. I would love to help you however I can. Okay. Yeah. All right, Ed, how you doing, bud?
Hey, good question. So before you get somebody to do something, do you try to do it yourself so that you understand how complex it is before you can, because you had fairly detailed like statement of SOPs.
Yes. If you can't do it yourself once, you shouldn't have your virtual assistant do it, because you don't actually know what success looks like. And so for me, I had been investing in real estate for 4.5 years. And unfortunately, I was an idiot and I was doing it all up here. And now I would write down a to-do list or something like that, but on a per project basis, it was all up here. And it wasn't until I I sat down and processed it, that I realized the pieces that they could do effectively and how to judge what effective. Just like any task that we have here at Facebook at Meta, if your manager doesn't know what they're asking for, then how are you supposed to deliver it effectively? If you don't have an OKR, how are you supposed to deliver it effectively? So I think that's a super important question and something I should have clarified.
Cool. And then I want to ask, how do you deal with like employment taxes?
Yeah. So thankfully talk to my tax professional, talk to your own specific tax professional. Yeah. They are responsible for filing their own taxes if they are a remote employee. I just have to pay and report it as part of my taxes, and I don't have to worry about it from that point. Now, that is what my tax professional has advised me, and he signs off on my paperwork. Talk to your own specific one as well. If you're hiring a US employee, that obviously is going to probably be a little bit different. You're probably going to need to 1099 or something like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. I see Stephanie asked a question. Do you have any recommendations for hiring a virtual assistant? Yes, many recommendations. You can go back through the presentation. I gave some advice, but I would go find a service. Either talked about Sphere Rocket specifically for real estate investing. I talked about OK Relax, which is more of a team-based thing. And I would have very clear criteria. I'll tell you, if you reach out to me, I'll probably end up sticking my team on their network to see if they have anybody that they think makes sense. So if you're looking for a virtual assistant and looking to hire somebody full-time, more than willing to help you out with that as well. But I would really have an understanding of what you need for the role before you try and hire. If you're just looking for some general admin, that's very different than somebody to be a chief of staff or something like that, which like Lizelle, for instance, she's not the kind of person you put on general admin. She's the kind of person that is running the show and is honestly bossing me and the rest of my team around. So I highly recommend having a really detailed look at what you're hoping to get. Israel, I see you just popped up. Any chance you have a question?
Hey, Nick, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, so when you got your first VA, did you hire her full time or did you start with just, I don't know, a couple hours, 4 hours per day? How did your progression was in that?
Yeah, so I had used virtual assistant services in the past. I was using one out of the US before I hired Lizelle, and I was paying for, I think it was like 40 hours a month is how it worked. It was crazy, stupid expensive. Yeah, not a great use of funds. I also used OK Relax before that point. And actually OK Relax I used in a previous job to help me with my W-2. Man, I looked like such a rock star showing up and having all these reports done in the morning. It was fantastic. But by the time I hired Lizelle, I knew I had 40 hours a week worth of work for her. And I had sat down and because I was putting in those 40 hours a week myself. And I was, or at least 30 hours a week. And I knew that she could help add additional hours by coming on and removing inefficiencies. So I started her full time. Now you could potentially split with somebody. If somebody else on this call says, hey, I need half time. Somebody else says, I need quarter time. You need quarter time. You could probably figure and cobble something together. But it was important to me. I wanted somebody to come in and be a team member of Giuliani Real Estate. Like I wanted her to come in and be an owner of the business. That's why I created the performance incentives above and beyond what I needed to from an hourly perspective, because I wanted to really align us. So I highly recommend using a different service if you're only going to do it part-time until you build up enough processes or enough SOPs to hire somebody, because this is somebody's livelihood. A lot of people might view the outsourcing as they're disposable, but no, this is how somebody is feeding their family. This is how somebody's putting a house over their head. And if you're only giving them a couple hours a week, then they're going to go find somebody who, and especially if they're good, they're going to go find somebody who will give them a full-time work.
Awesome, cool. And second question on the training to bring your VA up to speed where you need them to be. Did you document your processes, training? How that training transfer of knowledge happened?
Are you familiar with Lunas?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, for anybody who's not, it's videotaping yourself. Wow, I sound like 100 years old by saying videotaping. But you video yourself while simultaneously capturing the screen, so you can talk somebody through what you're doing. And so I just did that for literally dozens and dozens of tasks, and I put them all up on. I use Notion as like my favorite tool in the world. My wife works for Atlassian and is terrified of Notion, but it's an absolutely incredible tool for hosting data. And so I just shared these Notion pages. I had wikis where it's basically just a giant wiki. It's called the Giuliani Real Estate Wiki, and we just send that to all of the new hires. So Menchu uses it. Margie used it on Monday. And yeah, that's how I did it. Is I really sat down and I figured out everything they needed to do, and then I showed them how to do it. And then I actually, one of the other things that was really helpful for Lazille, and it took her a while to ask for it, was I started, there were training courses that I did with her where, hey, we would just sit down for an hour and talk about deal finding, specifically for, like, we're looking for this. And she didn't ask for it. And I just assumed, hey, she's taking notes or whatever. And she didn't ask for it at first, but it was really helpful for her in the long term, was that I posted those as well, those recordings of our conversations over Zoom for her so that she could go back and review it, because she would eventually have questions. So that's how I trained her up, and it was pretty darn effective.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a question here from Cole, and I'm sure I totally ruined that. Great question about if the chief of staff assistant is so good and entrenched in your day-to-day operations of your company, how come she's not considering starting a similar business for herself? What are the dynamics there? She has a couple superpowers. She is absolutely incredible. Sorry, my dogs, you can see are wrestling back there behind me. She has a couple of superpowers. Organization and bossing people around is absolutely one of them. She is a tyrant in the best possible way. She can't sell. She is not the person that's going to go out and work with clients. She's not the person that can go out and raise money. She's incredible at what she does, but I bring something to the table that she doesn't bring, and she brings something to the table that I don't bring. So I'm going to continue to grow with her. And I've told her, hey, she actually plans to move to the US. I told her, hey, you come to Indy, you come to Detroit, I got you. We will figure this out. And I will help her make that move. I think you're thinking a limited mindset of, hey, this is just an employee that's going to steal your secrets. This is an employee who has gotten an opportunity, who is incredibly appreciative, who when she was down with COVID and I couldn't get in touch with her, I found a way to get in touch with her fiance who lives out here in the United States, and made sure that he was in contact with her and that she was safe, and that we sent food to make sure that she was taken care of. So if you're thinking about it as kind of a transactional basis, you're totally right. She could go out there and emulate this and probably do it for you. She won't do that. And honestly, she's making more money with me than she could make if she was just to sell those services out on the open market, most likely, because she's making upper middle class for her particular market. All right. Anybody else? I can cut it off early if there are no other questions. That was a good one, though. All right, not quite as many questions as the creative finance. That's all right. But yeah, anybody who's interested in virtual assistants and getting started, hell, I got to tell you, like, with the level of interest here from this one, makes me almost want to start up my own like team-based virtual assistant. Just because it sounds like Israel might not have 40 hours, but might want to fill that time, or at least parts of those time. If you guys have any interest in something like that, let me know. I always need to add more team members, and I have more virtual assistants hitting my inbox than I know what to do with. So feel free to reach out if there's anything I can do to be helpful. If there's really anything virtual assistant related. Additionally, you guys want help getting started in real estate investing, feel free to reach out. We're doing the coaching program starting in March. So really excited about you guys. Is my presentation available somewhere? Yes, I will post it in addition to the recording here in a little bit once it's done processing. So I will make sure that you guys have access to it. All right, guys.
Nick,
you're welcome, Stephanie. Yeah, go for it.
You mentioned VAs can help you vet the deals also. So do you share like your underwriting spreadsheet with them and let them fill up the data?
Yeah, they do it on, they analyze literally 100 deals, if not more, every single week for me.
But that would have taken a lot of ramp up, right? Because every single deal, every asset class is different. You got to take different factors in. So
I don't underwrite other asset classes. I underwrite one asset class in one market. Okay. And that's what I have them focused exclusively on. So you're totally right. I processize every single piece of this, including deal find in my market, in my asset classes. And they go through and they're able to do it. And then once they find a house they like, they don't even, in a lot of cases, wait for me to get interested. They'll send my contractor out there to validate the scope of work. They'll send my inspector out and start spending my money without even asking. And that's the best thing that could have happened. Now, if you're ambiguous, it sounds like you don't necessarily know exactly what you're investing in. If you're talking about a variety of different asset classes, that means that you aren't dialed in on exactly what you want. Then a virtual assistant can't help you. If you don't know what you want, they certainly don't know what you want. But I'll tell you, if you get really good at one asset class, you nail single family houses, and you have one virtual assistant that's just tackling, that can be full time and more than justify having a virtual assistant handling that. You could then go have somebody underwriting self-storage for you, or just land contracts. You can have another one underwriting, if then they're successful there. Then you have another one underwriting apartment complexes, whatever that looks like. But you had better have that system down yourself before you hand it off to anybody else.
Thanks. Yeah, my question was if you are handling multiple asset classes.
No, I'm super boring, man. If you look at my houses, all of them look exactly the same. Yeah, once you're on the inside, they all have the same kind of woodish gray flooring. They all have the exact same color paint. They all have the exact same countertops, because I know, and I can underwrite that very effectively within my market.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. Hey, really appreciate everybody hopping on. Please do reach out, nick@giulioni.com. It's a pretty darn easy one, although a lot of vowels in that. Or if you're interested in anything here, giulionirealestate.com. Really appreciate it. Have a good one, guys. Stay healthy and have a great weekend.